Hey all, here at OS Reviews. You're watching our hands-on review of the Neo Smartpen dimo. This is actually their least expensive model out of all of their smart pens currently available, and we have recently reviewed their M1 Plus, which is more of their higher-end smart pen. When you close it, as you can hear there, it kind of automatically goes into sleep. Some of those sensors are missing here. In addition, instead of using a rechargeable battery, it takes a standard AAA battery. So because of those two slight changes, it's also going to be more cost effective. Now the other elements though are still the same. It's still a Bluetooth smart pen, and it uses an infrared camera built onto the end of the tip here to recognize what you're writing and basically in real time send that information over to your companion smartphone or tablet, backed up, and you can even search and transcribe it into typed text later on. So it's a great note-taking tool. Here's a pretty cool view of what is all the internals inside, the circuitry, the refillable pen barrels, and the battery there, as well as the companion app. Now I do believe that this one has a slightly different companion app than the M1 pen. It uses the Neo Studio app. So on the very top here, we have access to the AAA battery. One is included. Aside from the pen itself, we just have a quick user manual printed both in English as well as in Korean. They also give you kind of a practice area where you can use to write things out to make sure that it's actually working once you have the app opened. And the reason is because just like other smart pens that we've seen before from the company here, also from LiveScribe, is it does work only with specialized paper that you can either print or you can purchase from them. And these pieces of paper basically have tiny little micro dots embedded onto the surface, which you can see if you can zoom all the way in. And it's because of these tiny dots that the camera is able to then recognize the position of where you're writing on the paper and more accurately send that information over to the companion app. Now here it tells us to write optimally between 40 and -20 degrees. Because there is a camera, you have to make sure that you don't cover up the camera when you're writing. It's definitely a little chunkier than the M1 Plus, which is closer, I'd say, to a ballpoint pen in terms of its barrel thickness. It's a lot slimmer and more petite. This is by no means fat, but it's a little bit closer to, say, a dry erase marker, maybe a highlighter than a standard kind of pen, but still feels relatively comfortable and fairly lightweight. It is constructed out of a polycarbonate plastic. And then on the bottom here is actually where you have a physical power key that you can tap on to turn it on or off. You can also untwist this particular part for inserting the battery. So we've unlocked it and we can now pop it in. With the battery inside, the pen does feel a lot heftier in terms of weight, and it is a little bit heavier, in fact, than the M1 Plus, but gives it kind of a reassuring feel. Also isn't too bad in terms of the overall comfort. Now, as you kind of pop things open, you can see that there is a kind of pen tip, which is pre-applied, although it seems like in the box you only get one of these refill inks. The ink cartridges, they do fit a number of different brands from third parties. They provide a list on their website that you can pick up pretty cheap refills when on the go and swap out the color as well if you want to, but only one is included directly out of the box. Now the grip here is a lot thinner and it's going to be a bit more ergonomic, has kind of a triangular tip to it, as you can see there. It almost reminds me a little bit of a calligraphy pen. So that's basically where the magic happens, and it's using this little sensor that's able to pick up all the things you're writing and then send it over to your phone when the Bluetooth is turned on. Let's take a closer look at the pairing process and the companion app next. Let's turn on Bluetooth. One thing I am noticing though is some of the instructions here are primarily in Korean, so hopefully we'll start to see the language also updated down in the future. It seems like there's a microphone key that we can use to record sound. So right now it's picking up our voice, doing a quick voice memo, but that's using, again, the phone's microphone. The weird thing is certain tabs are in English, like the terms and conditions. But anyways, on the right side here, we do have access to our voice memos that you can tap on to kind of play it back. We also have kind of a customization if you want to change the background here, the theme of the app from a dark background to a brighter one. You can actually do that. So if we actually close out of the app and relaunch it, now it should be a dark mode, which is going to also save you on power if you have a AMOLED display. I can tap on the top left-hand side here to bring up controls for the pen, including the thickness in addition to changing the color as it's displayed in the digital notepad. The LED light here on the pen has also turned green once we are connected successfully. So if I try writing something very quickly here, like just following the 20 just suggested, you can see that automatically it's opened up to a new page. It's actually recognized that we're trying to write on the instruction manual, and it's popped up the relevant quick start guide digitally, which is pretty cool. So the special papers are also coded in a way where even the density of the small dots seem to be different on the various pages that Neo sells, so it's able to differentiate between different types of notepads. Zooming in, you can see that little mark I made with the pen, and it's also showing up on screen here, which is doing a decent job. I can also try to trace over the 0, for example, and kind of see it pop open in real time here. The connection is pretty fast and swift, so the kind of lag here as we're writing, you can see is actually pretty responsive. If I try to change the pressure, such as pressing really hard, and then kind of pressing more lightly, pressing hard again, you can see that it doesn't really delineate between levels of pressure sensitivity. That is a feature that you will find on the more expensive NeoPen M1 Plus. Personally, I don't think lacking this feature is a deal breaker, because I would say 99% of users out there, don't really need pressure sensitivity. It still is perfectly legible, and everything is still great for note taking, unless you plan on using the pen in terms of artistic needs like drawing and sketching, and you're, again, more of an artist and you expect to have different levels of shading also transferred over to the digital copy. Then perhaps you can spend a little bit more for that feature on the M1 Plus. We can change the color of the text as it appears, so let's change it to red, for example, and do something like say hello. Just write very small. You can see that now it will also pop up as red in the text area, and everything is still perfectly legible. Again, the camera is pointed down below here, so you have to make sure that it's kind of looking at the page as you're writing. If you have a habit of, say, covering up the camera, or if you're kind of writing upside down, it's not going to capture what you write. So for example, if I turn it and say, kind of draw a smiley face, it actually was still able to successfully recognize it, which is a little bit unexpected, because in the older generations of these smart pens, if you turned it upside down, it would not be able to detect it. But on here, it's actually still recognized. So it seems like the accuracy has definitely improved. It's almost 360 degrees now, unless you really cover up the sensor with your thumb. So if I'm satisfied with this note here, I can also take a look at other settings, like additionally recording some voice memos on top of this page, which is pretty neat, in addition to sharing it onto social media, kind of saving it, adding a hashtag. This is kind of a filter that you want this notebook to then be recognized as. So for example, I can say this is a tutorial, and kind of save that and add that to this particular page. We can see all of our thoughts on various pieces of paper, as well as notepads that are recognized, and I can also kind of search through based on different keywords, things like tutorial. If I tap on that, you'll see that note pop up. The difference between this first tab and second tab isn't the biggest, but the second tab is basically your archive of all the notes you've taken historically on the pen. It can be, again, hundreds of pages, for example, versus the first page here is basically your history. So it's going to just show the most recent few notes that you've taken. So that was quite interesting. If we try to change the notebook to something else, one of their other existing products, like the Professional Black, if we begin putting our pen down onto this piece of paper, you can see immediately it's popped up as a new page on the app. It says 003 page, because this is the third page of this particular notebook. Otherwise, writing for these kind of notes works in exactly the same way. If we go back, we can see that it's added this particular page, but it's under the context of a Professional Black notebook. The camera is also quite detailed, so you can write in very small font and it will still pick it up. So if I do a purposefully small test here and say kind of tiny test, you can see this is in absolutely small font. We kind of zoom in using multi-touch on our digital pad here. You can see that it's actually replicated it very well in terms of details. So it picks up things like strokes very well, especially if you're pointing the camera downwards in its kind of optimal position. It is actually going to work, again, much better than really expected. So a great way to kind of automatically save your notes. And of course, the benefit of this versus a traditional scanner is as you're writing, everything is already automatically saved onto the app. You don't have to then spend more time scanning things in or capturing it using a camera, which doesn't have quite as much detail or clarity often. Now, if you're wondering whether this pen works with the existing NeoNotes app, which we saw when connecting to the M1 Plus, the answer is actually not right now. So we are still currently limited to the Neo Studio app, which again, the language settings for the text is still in Korean. So that's just one thing for them to hopefully address in the near future. Everything else, though, in terms of the dates and the inspirational quotes, though, are in English. Finally, the power off animation is exactly the same as the other Smart Pens. It's actually multicolored, so you can tap on it, it will change through kind of a rainbow of colors and then proceed to turn off. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the Neo Lab Dimo, their newest smart pen and their most affordable option yet. Again, I anticipate the price to be under $100. If it goes on sale for even less than that, it could definitely be a good value smart pen to consider. Really, areas where it's improved compared to past generations of these smart digital pens is in the recognition of the camera, which, as we saw in the demo, has been surprisingly good. You can kind of rotate it past the estimated 40 to 80 degrees, and it can still pick things up even if you kind of hold the camera upside down. It recognizes all of these special papers from the company really quickly, such as their various notes. All of their products are compatible with them, different types of journals, different notebooks which they sell. The pricing is all quite fair, I would say, and competitive with regular journals, so it doesn't cost too much more. The battery life with one AAA battery does last longer before you need to change the battery, so that's one more peace of mind. And the actual recognition, the speed, and consistency are all as good as their other smart pens, but again, for considerably less money. You can check out more details if interested in the links down below, but for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Neo Smart Pen Demo.